Hello, I'm Gabrielle again. Thank you guys for coming to my lesson. I will be teaching a lesson this week that is going to be aimed towards 8th grade science students. So I wanted to teach kind of a little mini science class, and this could be grouped into section SP85 of the Georgia Standards of Excellence, and that's the one that includes obtaining, evaluating, communicating information on gravity, electricity, magnets, forces of nature, machines, etc. So my little mini science class can be grouped into that section in my opinion. But I did want to put a little modern twist on it since I know we are a bit older than 8th grade students. I did want to talk about augmented reality today. So I want to touch on how it works, how it's kind of blown up in today's society, what it can be used for, pros and cons of using it, and of course how it can relate back to that SB85, as augmented reality does use electricity and man-made machines for its technology to work. So to start, what is augmented reality? Does anyone have a guess on a rough definition of augmented reality? And it's not something you make up in your head. Okay, well, the official Merriam-Webster definition, which we can write down, is it is a technology that superimposes a computer-generated image on the user's view of the real world, thus providing a composite view. So, composite view, a view of everything added together. So this AR, augmented reality, is a technology that superimposes this computer-generated image to change the view of the user's real world. So let's go into that a little bit more. After hearing this, has anyone heard of anything similar to this? Maybe virtual reality? Yes, okay. That is a bit more popular, I guess, or well known among our society. But do you guys think that virtual reality and augmented reality are the same thing? Yes? A yes or no? A yes? The answer is no, they're not the same thing. So while they are similar and they kind of possess the same ideas, they are two different types of technology. So the answer for them being the same would be no, because virtual reality uses virtual information to form the user's perception of reality. So virtual reality forms the user's perception using virtual information. Virtual reality, easy to remember. While with augmented reality, the difference is the user is provided with this computer-generated information, but it actually enhances their view of their own perception of reality. So, while it sounds a little bit confusing, with virtual reality, remember it's virtual. They are using computer-generated images that you're seeing that are virtual, and that's the end of it. With augmented reality is using a combination of a lot of different things, not just computer-generated images, so you're getting a more real-life picture of what you're actually seeing. And we'll go into more detail on that. But to give you an example first, to just kind of separate the two, virtual reality and augmented reality. If you were planning on building a park, hypothetically, you wanted to build a new park in your community. If you wanted to use VR, virtual reality, for your presentation, presenting it to your company, showing them exactly what you want it to look like, who thinks it would be better to use VR? Who thinks it'd be better to use AR? Okay, the answer is AR would be better. This is because virtual reality, if you were going to present it with your new park, you would be seeing a virtual walkthrough of the new park. So it would be computer generated images, and you could walk through and see, you know, somewhat into depth, but that would be the end of it. Wherever your computer generated images stop, that's where you would stop seeing. While with AR, augmented reality, you would be shown a real life view of what this park would look like. So you would see the trees, the flowers, the grass, every single road, every building. You could look up into the sky. And this is because the AR has geographic awareness of the locations and the roads, and they blend this with their computer generated images. So you get a much more real life view of what you're actually looking at. So back to our hypothetical situation, if you were going to propose building a new park, you should use that augmented reality, because that would show your company exactly what it would look like in the real world, real perception, everything would be in depth. So augmented reality gives you a kind of a better picture compared to VR. And augmented reality is sometimes called the closest man-made alternate reality. So it's the closest thing as humans today that we have gotten to making a different reality. All right, and now that we know what augmented reality is somewhat, does anyone have any idea on how it actually works? No, I wouldn't expect anyone to. I will tell you. As I mentioned before, this AR does use a combination of aerial camera footage, geographic knowledge, virtual video design, softwares, and algorithms to make the most accurate image possible for its users. So I wrote those down up here, and if you guys want to copy those, that's a good way to remember the basics of AR. And of course we are in 8th grade class, so we're not going to go too much into detail on how it works, but you should remember that they are combining all of these different software aspects. So you have your aerial camera footage, which is from up above. You have your geographic knowledge, so AR devices are very geographically complex and they know every aspect of every place. And they combine those with their virtual videos, where they are virtually making up some pictures for a little bit of the time. They also have their own softwares and algorithms that allow this machine to work together and get that real life view. And AR also uses micro electromechanical systems. So micro electromechanical systems, a long word. And the most important thing to remember about these systems are that they incorporate diffractive and reflective waveguides. So diffractive and reflective waveguides are important to remember about that micro electromechanical system that's used to actually allow AR to function. And again, since we are 8th grade science class, it's not very beneficial for you to know too much detail about these at the moment, but you should just know for this lesson, micro electromechanical systems are used to allow AR to run, and those are based off of the interacting diffractive waveguides and reflective waveguides. So they work together, combined with all those aspects before, between the algorithms, the software, the virtual video design, geographic knowledge, and the aerial camera footage. Those all work together to help the user have this real life perception of what they're actually looking at. So if we want to relate that back to virtual reality, as we talked about earlier, virtual reality is simply using that computer generated image. So we can see now they really are not the same, because AR does have so many more concepts going into the picture you're seeing, not just computer generated images. So those waveguides working together allow AR to actually work. And with AR working, there are many different devices that it can work through. So these devices include hardware devices, So that's our first one we wrote down right there. Our first topic, hardware devices. These include anything with processors, sensors, and input devices, which sounds very confusing, but how many of you guys have a smartphone? We have one we're recording with, a laptop, tablet. So any of those will actually be considered hardware devices that incorporate AR. And this is because they have a GPS, a compass, those very super clear, fancy micro cameras. All of those incorporate an aspect of AR. So these would be an example of the hardware devices. Another example would be display devices. So these include various technologies that are actually worn on the human body. So as of right now, they have head-mounted displays, and like we talked about the VR before, they look very similar to those. They're just little kind of rectangles that go over your head and they go over the side here. Head-mounted displays, those would be a hardware display. And they also have eyeglasses now, so they just look like little reading glasses. It's basically the same idea, but you can actually see that augmented reality through there. It's projected onto the glasses screen. And they also have eye patches now, so they can do one eye at a time. We'll talk a little bit later how it is used in the health profession, but you can do one eye at a time as well. So those are display devices, and unlike the hardware devices, the user would actually look into these devices and see clearly the augmented reality picture, whereas your phone, you're not really getting that conceptual view of the AR. You're not looking directly into the augmented reality, you're just using its aspects. So augmented reality can also be used for visual and interactional design. So meaning it can be used, like we said earlier, if you're planning on designing a park, if you're planning on designing a building, engineering anything within architecture, you can use this program to make your augmented reality that will look as similar to real life as we can ever get. So augmented reality can be applied in many, many different applications, and you guys can write all these down. It would be helpful to kind of relate it back to today's society, but it's used, as we touched on, in architecture and archaeology. So it's used for building. It's also used in education. So in our STEM education, there has been a little bit of research and testing on presenting these different realities to the kids and seeing what that does for their education, seeing if it could boost their learning. If, for example, your Spanish class is in Spain instead of just watching a video on Spain. That's an example. It's also used in commerce, it's used in literature, it's used in visual arts, it's used for gaming. Kind of more on the more advanced side of it, it is used for health and science education. So say you're training to be a surgeon, we now have the technology to where you can see exactly what that surgery would look like, and you can actually perform that brain surgery with real life applications and real life effects using that augmented reality technology. It's also used in military training and other workplace training. So we're training these military people where they can actually see in person, they're in combat, experiencing firsthand what it would look like in real life, which is something that we haven't been able to do in the past, as well as, let's say, firefighters, policemen. They can actually do these in-person, real-life training situations. So that's definitely kind of groundbreaking and something we didn't have before. So it's been an improvement, and there has been some research done on it that the more we are training and preparing for these real life situations, the better they're reacting when they do experience them in real life. So it has been very helpful. And my own personal favorite use of augmented reality, just because I am a psychology student, but we've been learning about how they're actually using augmented reality for patients who have agoraphobia, which is fear of public spaces. So they'll use that as kind of a exposure therapy where they'll put on the AR device and expose them to whatever they're afraid of, what's making them uncomfortable, and by repeatedly exposing them, they're actually making them more comfortable when they are in those situations in real life. So it's been used for those agoraphobic patients, and it's also been used for anxiety, depression, etc. So it's definitely something that's a big advance and that we didn't have in the past, and it's really interesting. If there's any questions, I'll send you guys the links to where I got all this information. Are there any questions?